let's go.
Thank you very much. First question.
So why have you not continued the time-limited funding for He Potama Rangatahi, despite that program exceeding many of its performance expectations? And you're now seeing actually 500 less people being supported as part of this program, as it was doing so a few years ago.
It has been continued.
And why are you not continuing time-limited funding? Why are you basically delivering 500 less people into employment as part of that program?
Yeah, so
at a time of growing unemployment.
So let me explain, as I said in my opening remarks, the Investor Save initiative that we have undertaken, which is ensuring that the most effective intervention in supporting people into employment, which is case management, is continued. Those staff were also time limited, and so we have extended it for a couple of years. What we do know, evidence tells us that case management is the most effective, but of course we have continued and will continue to deliver a wide range of programs, because we do know that different programs work better for different groups of individuals.
But you accept that in August 2024, you announced time-limited funding for this very initiative with the goal of supporting 3,000 young people into employment. MSD only supported 2,500. And now your target has now been reduced from 3,000 to 2,500. At a time of growing unemployment, and with the minister talking a lot about how young people could stay on a long-term benefit, why are you not investing on employment services initiatives like this one for a greater amount?
Well, we are investing. If I look at community coaching, for example, and the new bonus payment that will come in, they are exactly the sorts of interventions that are being funded with this Investor Save. It is exactly what it says on the tin, greater investment to get greater employment outcomes, and using a range of evidence-based interventions. The one that is the most successful is case management, which is why we continue to invest in it. There will be just shy of 70,000 job seekers and beneficiaries who will be in that case management this financial year. And so it's about choices. I fully accept that. But what we do want to do is ensure that taxpayer funding is going to the initiatives we know work. And sometimes that means altering the balance of what is funded and what isn't. And that's what we're doing with the Investor Save.
Just following on that comment then, we have heard from MSD in previous reporting that the frontline was basically at overcapacity. That came from MSD itself. You just said that case management was the most effective way of supporting people into employment. Is MSD frontline still at overcapacity?
No, so we've got 3 pieces of work that have been confirmed under Budget 25. One is the Services for the Future, that was previously called Te Pai Tāwhiti. And as I said in my opening remarks, started by the previous government. That's around driving greater efficiencies and simplifying.
Then why did MSD say that the frontline was oversubscribed?
If you want me to answer the question, you need to wait for me to finish answering the question. I said there were 3 initiatives. I've spoken about one. The other 2, automatic decision-making, which again started by the previous government with the automated decision-making standard passed in 2022, increasing the use of that so that tasks that would have been administratively burdensome for staff are being taken care of in an automated way. And the third is income charging. Income charging means that we improve the accuracy of payments made to beneficiaries, reduces rework, reduces conversations then around overpayment and around debt. So those are 3 initiatives that are all about supporting our frontline and making MSD more efficient and better fit for the future.
So
Supplementary follow.
Just a quick one, Minister. Investor Save is novel and new. Could you describe how that could make the efficiency for MSD much more achievable?
Yes. So what we've done is based the Investor Save, which is a very new approach. It was fair to say it was MSD that championed this approach in Budget 24 with emergency housing. So we have picked it up in the employment space with another of the government targets, which is to reduce the number of people on the job seeker benefit. It's about how do we ensure we have the level of investment upfront to improve outcomes over time. And that is why the 490 case managers that previously would have concluded at the 30th of June this year because the funding was time limited, we have extended it. As you could imagine, case management is a resource intensive investment, but one that we know works. We have collected a significant amount of data and evidence over the years, and we do know that that is one of the most successful interventions we can do. So that's why we're funding more of it. I would love the job seeker numbers not to be where they are, but that is the reality. So we have to invest more, and over time, we will see the benefits of that.
Your question, Jenny. Yes.
Thank you. Kia ora, Minister. How many additional jobs have been created by your government?
I'm not counting new jobs created. I can tell you with the budget announcement, there will be significant jobs under the Minister of Economic Growth's announcements in Investment Boost, for example. I'm clearly focused on the target, which is to reduce the number of people on the job seeker benefit. If you look at Budget 25 and initiatives like Investment Boost, we want to see more businesses have the confidence, because it is businesses that create the jobs, not government.
So under your watch, 18 months, there are 30,000 more people who are not in work right now. Could you point me to some of the initiatives that assist people into work that are new under your government? So not previous ones, but new initiatives that assist those additional 30,000 people under your watch into employment.
Yeah, so first let me backtrack. If you look at the job seeker numbers, they have continued to rise over many years. What we do know is when we have excessive government spending, higher interest rates, higher inflation, leads to a recession, and unfortunately people lose their jobs as a result. That is the point of the cycle we are at the moment. I would love to sit here and have a different set of circumstances, but that's what we inherited 18 months ago. That's what we are dealing with. I'm not necessarily convinced that lots of new programs get the outcomes we desire. Community coaching and welfare that works is what we have initiated. But as I've said in my opening comments, I'm far more interested in things that we have the evidence for what works. So Hei Po Tama Rangatahi, which was launched by the previous national government in 2017, is successful. We're continuing it. Mana and Mahi was introduced by the then Labour government. It's working, so we're continuing it. Case management though, case management is proving to be the most successful, even in very challenging labour market conditions. And as I said in my opening remarks, I'm really pleased to see the large number of people exiting the job seeker benefit into work despite challenging times. You would expect that the numbers would be lower than a year ago, and that's not the case. So what we're doing is working, and that's why the Investor Save means we can do more of it.
Do you think that scrapping workforce development councils has contributed to New Zealanders having 30,000 more people not able to find employment?
Well, as a Minister for Social Development and Employment, I'm not responsible for workforce development councils, and I would suggest that member ask the question of the Minister responsible.
What part of the budget reflects economic growth, considering we have lower growth, we have wages that are stagnant, we have businesses closing, and there are more people in New Zealand losing their jobs?
Well, as I've outlined, unfortunately, the conditions that we have come into, very high government spending, excessive and wasteful government spending, leading to high interest rates, high inflation, economic recession and job losses, is the reality of what we are dealing with. So if that member has questions for the Minister of Economic Growth, I'd invite her to ask them of that minister. But this is a growth budget, clearly Investment Boost, and I hope that member was at Field Days last week, because she would have seen the very businesses that employ New Zealanders all over our country who see that one initiative alone as being a significant stimulus to help get our economy growing again and back on track. And when businesses have confidence, of course, they employ more staff.
Maureen.
Plus one. Cumulatively, there are 66,000 more people on job seeker over the period to June 27 than forecast at the last election. Does this demonstrate that the policies that you're implementing are failing and that you're simply trying to blame a previous administration for your own failures to get people into work?
Not at all. We are dealing with a recession. We're dealing with economic conditions. Listen to any economist and they'll tell you they are going on worse for longer. The economic recovery is more sluggish, and that's a range of factors that the member
You don't believe
will
you've contributed to that at all?
Definitely not. No, we have gone on top of government spending.
Housing
The savings
construction
identified
leaving
in this
New Zealand.
budget are a good example of that. Have we got more to do in terms of savings? Absolutely. But we are focused on the job seeker reduction target, and I am not shying away from that target to reduce the number of people on the job seeker benefit by 50,000, because our government knows how important it is for individuals and families to be in work. We know that is the pathway out of hardship, and that's why we continue to focus on that as one of our 9 government targets.
Move to Maureen.
Thank you. Minister, just a sup to those questions about the unemployment. And I note in the budget documents that you are still expecting to see a rise in main benefits over the next year. So can you please explain how this budget is going to help bring those numbers down, and what gives you confidence that your programs are going to be working?
Yeah, so the member quite rightly highlights the change in the BFU forecasts of 24 to 25, and it does show benefit numbers continuing to rise, peaking at the end of this year. If I look at BFU 24, the original estimation was that job seeker numbers would peak in June, but that's been pushed out. That is why, in discussions with the Minister of Finance, I pushed incredibly hard to increase spending and employment initiatives in this budget through the Investor Save, albeit a new approach. because we have to, in effect, invest to support people into employment. And that's exactly the approach we've taken. And the member before me, well, hopefully would realise that the job seeker numbers were always forecast to increase before they got better. That doesn't mean you walk away from those people, because I'm very clear, every single person who comes off welfare and into a job, it can be life-changing for them, and that's what I'm committed to.
Just a supplementary on that, Minister, just how important is it to get people under the age of 25 off the benefit, and how quickly does that need to be done with data that you're seeing?
Yeah, so as I said in my opening comments, unfortunately, someone who goes on to benefit under the age of 25, we do know the forecast of the length of time they stay there is nearly 18 years, which is nearly 2 decades of their lives. And I'm unwilling to accept that. That's one of the reasons behind the shift in our 18 and 19 policy. It's really returning to an aspiration or an expectation that 18 and 19-year-olds are in further education, training or work. And that's what we want to return young people to, by rather than it being first choice or second choice even to go on welfare. We want to give them better opportunities in life, and that's behind this policy that will come into effect on the 1st of July 27.
Next question, Willie Jackson.
Kia ora, Minister. Minister, I'm sure you'll be concerned about the unemployment rate with Māori, and I just want to know, first of all, what's your strategy been around consultation with Māori, and in terms of addressing Māori unemployment, what are the strategies going forward? Have you got a plan in terms of that, given unemployment rate for Māori is double and has been for some years?
Yeah. So basically the Invest to Save is for Māori unemployed, Pacifica unemployed, disabled unemployed, you name it. That's why we have a range of initiatives available. And if you think about case management, that is why it is effective. It is dealing with the person in front of you, the challenges and barriers they face to employment. So yes, what we do know is when the labour market is tight and unemployment is higher than we'd like, it disproportionately affects young people, Māori, Pacifica, disabled. And that's why, again, focusing on an Invest to Save allows us to put more resource into the things that work.
Yeah.
In terms of your question around consultation, I'm meeting with providers on a regular basis, including Māori providers who don't solely run programs and services for Māori unemployed, but that's often heavily weighted in terms of the population.
Is there a problem, though, Minister, is there a problem in terms of, and I can understand what you're doing, but is there a problem with a universal type strategy, you know, as compared to the targeted strategy, which where you're doing a total focus in terms of Māori? You will recall we had Māori employment programs, we brought in the experts, you know, going down this universal strategy, which I think is where you're going. Don't you think you'll miss that target? I mean, isn't it, do you think that's one of the
It's not
problems?
universal, because if you look at Haipōtama Rangatahi,
Yes.
for example, I think it's 70% of the participants are
Yes.
Māori, and Manumahi, again, heavily proportion.
What about Māori trade
participants.
training, Minister? I mean, can you tell me why you cancelled Māori trade training?
Yep. So where there were time-limited funding, that's the first programs that would stop, and we've allowed many of those COVID initiatives and programs that were funded due to COVID to lapse. If you think back to those unfortunate times, we expected the unemployment rate, or some of the estimates would be that the unemployment rate would hit double digits. We're sitting at 5.1 as an unemployment rate. It hasn't moved in the last little while. So it does make sense that programs that were funded because of COVID and the circumstances at the time, we don't require those to be continued.
Although the feedback I get, with respect, Minister, on Māori trade training has been terrific. And you know, that was a concept that we started because our communities told us that this had been successful in past years, and we broadened it, you know, we brought in the hairdressing and all that. I would have thought it would have been something that you would have continued, given you had the success in front of you.
Yeah, so the reality is we can't fund everything. Part of having to prioritise and get on top of high government spending is actually making choices about what gets continued and what doesn't. And as I said, have been very clear about initiatives that were started due to COVID when the circumstances were envisaged to be quite different, with double-digit unemployment. Thank goodness we didn't reach those figures, but we're down at 5.1%, and we need to focus on the programs that have been funded, that we do know are successful, like Mana and Mahi, like Haipōtama Rangatahi, and case management.
I know there's others want to come in. Can I just come, I was listening to the exchanges over the homelessness kaupapa. Obviously, it's a very, very important kaupapa. Are you concerned that, in terms of the homeless area, about the amount of people who are homeless because of the use of sanctions?
Well, I'm not going to cover off areas that are a colleague's responsibility, but in terms of sanctions specifically, actually it's been really encouraging to see that 98% of those on benefit are complying with their obligations. They're at green. That's great news. 1.2% are at red. So that is a very low number. And the other addition that I thought the member might appreciate is that we have added, MSD have added a key performance indicator to their suite of measures around people understanding what their obligations are. So I think the traffic light system is working. The sanctions are fair and reasonable, and they're communicated when a person first signs on to a benefit. So there's actually multiple interactions. That's also why case management is effective. We want to see a more active welfare system and one that is more intensive rather than hands-off.
Supplementary.
Right, sorry, I forgot that this is not a generic select committee that we're watching. I've been sitting there for the last five minutes going, when is she going to leave and we move on to the next person? There isn't one. Sorry, guys.
It's all right. I know you're just trying to torture us.
I'm not, Sam is.
Somebody said in the comments, oh, we should put a lie detector test on them while they're giving evidence, but I don't think psychopaths, the lying doesn't register because they don't feel emotion.
You are correct, they do not.
So I'm not sure that you could actually, like, their dislike and disdain of people who are struggling is so obvious, and the contempt that they see people with, it's actually really hard to watch.
Yeah.
The sad thing is it's like they just do this shit. Like, you know, it's not even being conservative or anything like that. It's sort of basically it's like the previous government. You know, it always starts with the previous government. You know, was a cop case and where the bee's knees. Now, even though they're sitting there and every indicator is going haywire, isn't it? Like, you know, like if this was your house, you know, like at the moment, supposedly you just stop spending money and everything's going to come right. Oh, okay, no, that's cool. That's cool. It's a bit, you know, you're a business and you're going to like halve spending and you're going to get growth. Like, when has that ever happened? Like, if you're a farmer and you want to get growth in how much you produce, you spend more, right? Mm-hmm. So the thing is there was massive growth during the COVID time. Yeah, and there was a lot of debt because we printed a lot of money and we went into debt. And there was a lot of bad things, you know, about that debt and all the rest of it. But I don't care because it's just debt. The thing is these guys haven't actually paid off any debt. It's actually got more. And they've cut spending and they've done all these different things and they're going hard on the job seekers and all this. So they're going to drive 18 and 19-year-olds at the moment berserk. For what? For nothing. For absolutely nothing. They're going to like do all of this shit, and you know, at the end of their term, they've actually done nothing, and it just sort of seems really sad. Like, why were they sitting out there for 9 years only to come up with this shit? Which I'll tell you, the government that did this was Ruth Richardson. And before her, there was that other bastard.
What Muldoon?
No. Before there was one before that, and they've done this shit before, and we don't get any better for it. And this is the best year that we've had a really good year. They don't say this, but it's got nothing to do with the government. We've had a really good year. We've humped out a shit ton of exports.
Yeah.
There's no need to be cutting spending now and this sort of thing. But like, you know, we're fighting this other thing with this GE shit. They've spent $500 million
in the realm of, we don't know exactly how much once you add all of the different things.
Yeah, but into startups for genetically engineered vaccines for cattle and shit like that, and Mr. Luxon thinks they're going to make a fortune out of that. But no one wants to eat anything that's genetically engineered. It doesn't really matter. Everything's a startup. They're trying to turn all our sciences into selling startups. They've spent more money on this shit and they justify it with moonbeams and all sorts of things. Like, the justification for doing all that spending is pretty not really robust. And then the justification for doing this, man, they're doing backflips here. Hands down, man. Didn't Willie Jackson just went inside her and outside her like in the Matrix, man, and she doesn't even know what's happened. She's not very smart. Like, if she thinks she can just keep doing this shit, she's got 3 moves. Oh, the previous government. Oh, you're talking about the previous government. Where did this government? And he says, and the other lady said, but in your time, from the time that you've taken over, it's gone up, 30,000 people are now jobless. Like, it's got worse under you. It hasn't got better. It's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. Man, it's like, no wonder we've got ferries that they put on autopilot and they crash into a rock and no one knows how to take it off it. This government's on autopilot and it's just going to crash, isn't it? Just like that frigate over in Samoa. It's just going to crash. No one can take it off this course.
Yeah. The government makes my brain hurt.
Well, like when you're doing something, and it's like when you're growing something, when you're trying to grow something, because she's talking about growth, when you're trying to grow something and you're sitting there and you're standing there staring at your garden and nothing's sprouted for 2 years.
Don't talk about my garden that way.
No, but if you're sitting there, you're not growing something, are you? You're killing it. And it's like they're killing the economy.
But it's also what you invest in. So again, going back to this the patent thing, right? We had a science that used to study ecology, and that was a good investment because it was how farming could integrate with nature, and we weren't ruining our conservation land by over farming it, right? Now they've turned it into patent-based technologies, and they're all on get rich quick schemes. Mm-hmm. And they're believing their own ecosystem because they've all got them into MPI and MFE, and they're all writing reports and giving each other awards. And then it goes out to farmers like it did in the field days this week. And the farmers are going, you're wanting me to buy something that's going to cost me $30 a cow every 6 months, and it's going to devalue my product and might even get it turned down at the border. Why am I doing this again? Like, explain to me why you've invested in this, because this is going to destroy my market. And it's like, you've come up with this crazy scheme and you haven't actually talked to the end user.
No.
You're just trying to make somebody's life more difficult.
One of the big things that they were trying to sell at the field days was robotics and technology, like just artificial technology, cutting down the amount of staff that you need. So
increasing unemployment.
So, but she said there in that thing, you should have been at the field days because that's where jobs are being created. It's like, hang on, we've just been watching that. That was where jobs are being deleted, and she's also, do you know what I mean? Like, she's actually not being, like, if she was there, maybe she drank too much or something and just didn't. But, and she sort of said, what I just picked up, because I'm a numbers person, and 70,000 people, 490 case managers, and everyone says that if you have, I'm not really into this because I don't really want more case managers or anything like that. I don't want people subjected to this shit, but that works out to 150 people per person. So if I was in sales and I had 150 people, 150 clients, and I had to try and ring them at least once a week, how do you think I'd get on? I'd be like, I wouldn't want to, there'd be a high, I would say there is a huge staff turnover at the Ministry of Social Development.
Yeah, there is.
That's why there's only 490 staff, because a lot of the unemployed are coming from the actual Ministry of Social Development, because it'd be like asterisks in the 12 tasks where you turn people into chickens and idiots, as you put someone working in that place and they're just going to just blow their mind, and it's awful. And anybody that would want to work there, man, you'd be a bastard. You'd be an absolute lowlife.
Yeah, they talk about creating a job market and giving jobs to people, and this is what we need and that is what we need, and etc., etc. And you're exactly right, without talking to the people at the end who they say they're trying to serve. They're doing a terrible bloody job. And they're not thinking that, well, they don't seem to be thinking that these strategies and these things that they're putting in place to supposedly help people are actually harming us in the long run. WINS workers, MSD case managers, used to be trained for 6 months before they were allowed into the building to work with a client. Because they kept losing staff and their turnover was so high, that training got cut down to 6 weeks. The majority of MSD case managers do not actually know most of the thing that their clients are entitled to.
What used to be, I think, I can't remember if it was ACC or both ACC and work and income, but it used to be that they would actually get a bonus if they didn't give people what they were entitled to.
Yeah, no, there's a standard Ruth Richardson policy, which this just seems to be a reenactment of. So basically, where she's quoting that they've got those numbers off, that's because somebody sat there and hit delete, 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 bonus, delete, 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 bonus. Like block number,
Yeah.
That's all they're doing. And it's because, and I don't think that's ever been passed, but there was talk of making that illegal, the putting bounties on people's heads, and I don't think it ever got through. And it was something that I thought was a very good policy. I don't know if it was put up. I think it was put up by the Green Party, but I don't think it made it through. And that's something that we've got to make sure that, because that. It's not just the people that are getting hurt, it's the people that are doing it, because you're literally making Nazis.
Yeah.
You know that word on the internet.
Yeah.
No, I think when
be careful, you'll get us flagged.
I think when people
assassins, I guess.
Well, no. My thing is when, like, if you're in trouble and you can't feed your family or you can't feed yourself, I want to think that I pay tax in a country that has compassion, and I want to think that I live with a hell of a lot of conservative people that would be so angry that they would march if we weren't behaving like that. And the sad thing is for conservatives in this country is they think it's okay if what they call the left is outraged. They don't have to get outraged. Well, there's some conservative values that you should never let go of, and that is compassion, because conservatism is meant to be from a faith-based thing, where you love thy neighbour. And so, this is why when Ruth Richardson came into this country and this sort of policy was created, it was so foreign to a national government, because national government used to be truly conservative. Now it's not. I don't know what it is.
It's a business. It's a business. It's a
business model.
But it's not even the party of local New Zealand business and growing local New Zealand business. It's the party of corporations. And if you're an international corporation and you don't even pay tax here, that we'll still treat you more fairly than we will a local plumber or a builder or farmer. because you've got big numbers on the board, even though you pay no tax here because you've got clever accountants.
But
One of the things, like we used to have, where we'd have the trains and they'd be publicly owned, and we'd build our own trains, we maintain our own trains, and then you created a whole pile of people that were learning a skill on the job, and they were actually being paid to keep the public services running. And when we privatised all that, we actually created a situation where you're paying more for those services. So because you've got to pay shareholders bonuses and profits and all that sort of thing, it actually costs the public more, but the workers get less too. And so it's creating this whole cycle where you're sort of paying for unemployment instead of paying people to actually have a job, because you want to privatise everything because you've got this ideology of the free market. And it's not the free market.
Privatisation is not going to work in a country of our size. We are simply too small to support that kind of economic infrastructure. If we privatise everything, we have to sell everything offshore. Everything. Our schools, our hospitals, our public transport, you know, our social development things.
Science.
They're, yeah. See, this government is breaking my brain and my words aren't working.
It's quite shocking, actually. Like normally you'd have I might submit on 4 or 5 things a year. Like when I go through all of the things I should be submitting on, it's 4 or 5 things a month. And I'm just overwhelmed, and that almost seems to be part of it. And that's, again, not conservative, ripping out the structures of the society that's held it together. Normally you'd expect them to repeal a few things from the previous government that were just a bit too flaky or weren't working or whatever, but you'd expect them to sort of settle everything down. And that's sort of what Conservatives do, is when there's been big changes and then you let it settle and you let things balance out. But they're just not doing that. They're more radical than any left party that I've ever seen.
But didn't, you know, when you look at Willie, like I'm just so impressed with Willie, because Willie's had his time on talkback radio and all that sort of thing. And, you know, in election time, and there's no one better. And in the House, like, he's really good. He's being so restrained in that situation, and he's just being, he's actually asked, you know, like he's not politicking in a way. He's just being straight up, and he's actually giving her like every opportunity to, you know, to actually have a go. And she just can't stop politicking. She's not there working. You know, like I'm always impressed by ministers that will use processes in the House, and they're there as a minister, and it's minister first, party second, but she's just party first and stuff what I do. And then she's like saying, oh, well, I don't have to answer that question because I'm not the minister for that. Like, you should know.
Yeah.
You should really know.
She really is. Like, she is, you're right, she is actually just saying, fuck the average Joe of this country. Like, that's all there is to it.
100%. And it's just like, and everything that she does is just justified on, look, we've told a story that the last government was a cop case. We're the bee's knees. If anyone says that we're not, well, you just got to remember that the last government was terrible and we're better. It's like, gee, the story is actually the last government was terrible and you're 10 times worse. You know, like someone's going to seize on that. You know, like McNulty's going to say, well, yeah, okay, maybe we were a bad government, but Jesus, you bastards are 10 times worse. Yeah,
and that's always the game plan, and that's all it is to them. Like I was saying to Sam on the show last week, like it's they just see it as a game. They play us off against each other. They play us off against our neighbours because they have more than we do, or they have less than we do, so therefore they are worse than us. No, they have worse than we have. They have less than we have. Therefore, we need to reach out and help.
Yeah, and there's where we get the homeless person, because the homeless person goes, "Fuck this! I'm not playing this game," and that's all they're doing. and they look down on that person, but that person has actually got no intent to harm anybody, and they look down on them and they think, you're dangerous to me. It's like, no, you're dangerous to everyone.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
The homeless person, man, like I love homeless people, like, because the thing is, they never ever stop surprising me. It's like, I've, you know, you have, of course, you have them rip you off. Of course, you have them to do different things. But I've been down and out, and a homeless guy's given me $20.
Oh wow. Yeah.
You know, but I was down and out. Maybe I looked homeless. I don't know. I was pretty drunk, but you know, like, and it wasn't necessarily somebody that I'd helped before. But like, as young people, you know, like when we'd go out on the town, we were making lots of coin. So we saw some guy that was down on his luck, we'd like throw them some money, you know. But I always noticed that the people in suits didn't.
Yeah.
You know, like we were working in forestry, and people will walk past in suits that were worth about what I earned in a day, and they'd never give them homeless people anything. And you know,
No.
I just, yeah, I don't know. I don't get conservatism without compassion. I don't understand that, and I think that's incredibly, you know, like, it's incredibly dangerous because it's an elitism, and an elitism is, in this country, it's too bloody small, and it's too basic. We are not we've got no justification for elitism in this country because it's we don't even have fast rail.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
Pacific. Don't get it confused, man. Like, our airplanes can't even run on time. You know, like, we've got no justification to have elite people thinking that they're elite, and that's what these people are introducing into our politics, and it sort of ruins it because we weren't ever like that.
But that's everywhere in the world, isn't it? Whenever there's an elite class, that's the problem. It creates a problem. Hi, Ray.
Hi, I made it.
Welcome back.
Duties completed.
Yeah. No, I don't understand conservatism without compassion, but also without tradition. And this government's like trying to get rid of the Maori MPs, trying to change the Treaty of Waitangi, trying to change all of these founding documents. That's not conservatism either. And it just really, I'm quite confused of it, to be honest. I don't really understand it.
Yeah.
There we go. That's
and I was just going to say before, like, you don't have to be, you're a structured religious person to have compassion, to have empathy, to love your neighbour, to want to help your fellow man in your country where you live. You should not have to be a religious zealot fanatic.
Yeah.
To want to raise the bar for the people around you instead of just yourself.
Well, see, the thing is what I don't get is, like, even these rich people, they want to see, you either want, I think we've always been a country that what we've started on is that the more money that everybody's got, the more wealthier that we're all going to be, and it rises up like that. Now it's like, and what this government really looks like to me is that the amount of money it can strip out of the bottom and put in the top, and that's shit.
Well, it stays in bank accounts. It doesn't actually get spent in the economy, and so it makes
it doesn't.
The whole country can't grow, whereas, like, you know, they always say China's like, oh, communism, but that's how they work. They try to bring the more money,
everybody up together.
Yeah, everybody up, and of course, you know, and what of course they do. They go round up the oligarchs and they take their money off them. But like, that's not a bad thing.
Well, Michael Hudson, the economist Michael Hudson, he says that China isn't a communist economy. It's an industrial economy. So it's actually stayed at industrial capitalism, where it's trying to lift everybody up out of poverty and get everybody working, and it's created regulations so that the wealth cannot be stripped out of the country.
Wow.
And what are we doing? We're stripping the wealth out of the country and putting it over in Wall Street with our
Trying to,
with KiwiSaver and all sorts of things, and like letting investment funds buy up our farms and plant monoculture pine trees and cut them down and leave all of the slash everywhere, and so all of the beaches are polluted. I don't know if you've seen that in the Hawke's Bay. So yeah, it's just everywhere. It's just like trying to make money and you're actually losing it.
Yeah. Did you have something to say, Ray?
that reminds me of my submission on the regulatory standards, because I'm thinking, if, you know, what about your community appointed overseer or something that can come into a forestry site and be like, yeah, you're doing this, doing that, whatever? Because what do you want to change regulatory standards if they're not being met already, if there's no accountability? That this, you know, destroying people downstream. Other countries have done it too with avocados, and all of the farmers that have been doing it for hundreds of years suddenly have no water because up the valley they took it all. But
Same with almonds.
Same with
Almonds.
right, and that might explain why I didn't digest that mouthful the other day. Soraya, I think you mentioned once, or it might have been you. We had a employment security of a sense. If you don't have the job, you can get a community service job kind of thing. I want to see that.
Yeah.
Time rather than it be a punishment. Community service done right, you know, willingly.
What used to be just things like restoring things in the
Yeah.
the railing, you'd be painting the railing today. As part of your community service, not community service, but as your employment. So the thing was like even caring for the shared spaces that we have.
How come that isn't freed up? It's just gone into employment companies. It's not just available there. The work isn't available.
Yeah.
And then you get those employment companies where you're like hiring temporary labor, and then you actually see how much that person's being paid versus how much the company is getting paid.
Yeah.
So the company charges them out at $50 an hour, where they might, at the actual employee is only getting 20. And
so that
Yeah. It's
about
the person doing the hard work is always the person that gets the least money.
Yeah. They've never done anything. They've never done anything about those things. They've never made. They could, if they really wanted to attract young people to go into work. Well, then you'd have a tax policy where the first 15,000 that you earn was tax free, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
It's just that simple. You know.
Exactly. Like if you wanted young people to go into study, you would not take away the first year of funds free, like fees free. Sorry.
Yeah. So it's just all pain, isn't it? It's like
It is.
one bit of pain. People haven't got anywhere to go, and then because they haven't gone anywhere, it's because they can't go anywhere, and then you create more pain. It's like it's just
Yeah.
But so that was one of the books there. That one's from the 1960s that he wrote. Can you see
Full
it?
employment. W. Rosenberg.
Yeah, and then that one's the more recent one.
The Magic Square. Brilliant.
So what people, and the alternatives to Rodonomics. And it's got like, the forward was by Jim Anderson, who was the politician. What party was he? I always forget.
Jim started Social Credit, which went on the
That started
Alliance. This shows how old I am. Did it die? Must have died out.
Well, once you don't get voted in, the party dies out, really.
It was all started around the same time as the Greens. Like, there was an amazing period of politics in this country. Like we had the Greens, social credit. There was like
MMP.
was it?
Yeah.
No, I think Anderson started before MMP. I think it was like because there was just two main parties, and I think it went. I can't remember which first. That'd be actually really interesting. Something we need to look into. But then MMP made it easier for smaller parties. But really, there was only National and Labor ones. But you know,
We're going to get in trouble with Sam because we haven't watched more of her terrible.
That's all right. I can put the link in and people can do it themselves. It's fine. But hold on, quickly, where'd it go? This one, 10 days sick leave. I saw this article today too, Jason. And it just proves that Luxon actually has no idea what his ministers are doing. Because when Brooke was asked about it, she said, no, we are not removing 10 days sick leave. However, they are trying to work on a bill or an amendment or a piece of legislature that will make it more fair and equal, depending on whether you're a full-time, part-time or casual employee, which is still fucking ridiculous because I don't think that part-time and casual employees should be ripped off from their sick leave just because they don't work as often. I'm sorry, what happens if you have surgery and you're a casual employee and you suddenly can't go to work? Like,
It's really hard to get full-time employment in rural communities. It just really is. And so these sorts of things are just sort of set up.
well, the sad thing is fix the hospitals, mate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the thing is a lot of under their watch, hospitals have gone from say they were like a little bit fucked, now they're like massively stuffed, right? So
yeah,
so if you're sick and your hospital works, maybe you could go to like the hospital or you could ring up and go to a doctor, but sometimes you got to wait 10 days to go and see a doctor.
oh fuck, is that all?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? When they start messing around with sick leave days and all the rest of it, like the pandemic, it was easier to see a doctor, right? So our pandemic's over now, it's all good, but you could actually go see a doctor, right? Now you can't. Now the amount of practitioners, GPs, and that, we haven't got enough, all this sort of shit. We know this stuff. Why would you mess about with this shit? Because you're only going to make your own failures in other things look worse, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know? Or is this just pre-electioneering for the few people that make donations to the party that want sick leave thrown out? Is that all this is? Because that means it's like we've done being the government, we're now campaigning, and we're only going to campaign for donors.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's pretty shit. Because
That's what that's all National Lever does, though, is campaign for their donors.
Well, it's not farmers at the moment either. So
No.
I don't know who they're actually for.
Themselves. And their business
It
buddies.
seems very personal this time.
Yeah.
And they keep some of the in the lead parties. They do betray their own hand when they cite the other side as accusing them of this or that. Like, we didn't actually say that, man.
Yeah.
We spoke generally. You're the one that's getting defensive, so
Yeah.
that's my point.
Yeah.
Forcing the good side to be even better with their delivery of words.
But yeah, it's pretty. That's the one I have seen that's stuck up for me. Like, you know, messing around with sick days, because like that's, you know, the worst thing is if you are crook and you carry on trying to work and stuff like that. Sometimes it's okay, like when you're young, you know, like sometimes it is good. And sometimes you just get over it. But because the COVID thing really sort of stuffed a lot of us up, because some people, like as soon as they get sick, they don't know that. Well, they instantly go, well, should I better take a day off because COVID? And
I don't want to get the rest of the office sick.
Yeah, and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
Sometimes it is good, but sometimes it's bloody not, because sometimes, like if you've got a temperature and it's really, really high, and you're seeing double and you're starting to see stars and shit, man, you might actually have meningitis. And
and I can't get to the doctor, and I'm scared that they're going to fire me if they don't believe me. But it came back because I was that sick recently. It's like, that wasn't meant to happen. I thought it was just a cold.
Yeah. And that's like if they're attacking the sick days, it's like somebody that does have a rough time. Like sometimes you're lucky. Some people are remarkable, eh? Some people, it's like, geez, man, you're really sick. Go home. Don't doing here. Go home. And they turn up the next day, and it's like, how come you're not sick? Because you're thinking of yourself, and you'll be sick for like 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
You see some poor bastards, and it's like they either just everything's so run down, and it might take 2 weeks for them to really get over things. We're all different. Like this, it's like it's just great to have actually paid sick days.
Or if you've got children, it goes around the whole house and then you're back again. So you've got to take care of the kids, and then you catch it again by the time they've got it. So.
Yeah. I was actually really extremely lucky in my last full-time gainful employment job. I was extremely lucky that I didn't get bloody fired. Most nights, because I worked late shifts in the local supermarket, most nights I was going home early because I was in too much pain to stay and continue working. Most weeks I was calling in at least once a week to call off sick, because I was just in too much pain to even get out of bed, let alone work. And so it's nice to see that I'm just going to say the right-wing government is finally realising that there are people in New Zealand who legitimately cannot get out and work to support themselves. During the 2020 elections, I got to be part of a group of people that spoke in front of some candidates, asking questions about social welfare and benefits and how they were going to support people who genuinely needed that. Ricardo was there via audiovisual link because he could not get to Wellington in a matter of hours, because I believe it was Marama had to cancel at the last minute. So Ricardo jumped in for her. He was amazing. Nicola Willis was there. I was very highly unimpressed. She listened to my speech and my question, supposedly, and then turned around and told me that disabled people should still be out working even when they are in too much pain to do so. The moderator that we had for this session saw the look on my face. I was the only person that she said, would you like to repeat or elaborate on your question so that this candidate can understand what it is that you have actually said? Because Nicola Willis just did not seem to get it. She saw the look on my face. I literally wanted to be sick.
You've told me this and I keep conveniently forgetting it because it's too painful.
Yeah. Yes.
I met her receptionist, who was a lovely man. Perhaps we should go and he says, come by anything you need. Maybe we should go have a conversation. An apology. See where she's at with that story. Was it UCAN speaking or?
No, I wasn't doing it for you, Ken. I was doing it for. Oh, I can't remember anymore. But it was something to do with youth. Because technically under the UN I was still youth at that point, even though I was in my late 20s. Right, we're going to jump back into this thing, because we have been chatting for a very long time about what bullshit they are bringing up.